So, Craig, been another week of turmoil at the White House and in Washington generally. But before we get to that, there's some news this morning out of Wisconsin. Sean Duffy has decided he will not run against Tammy Baldwin for U.S. Senate in 2018. So what do you make of that? Is this more about Duffy's liabilities or more about Baldwin's strengths?
Well, a lot of things go into these decisions. There could be personal factors. He's got a very large family, a lot of young kids. We don't know exactly why he made this decision. There's no reason for him to have shied away from the race for political reasons. I mean, this is an opportunity race for Republicans. It's a harder race than it would have been if Hillary Clinton had won the presidential election, because it's always harder when your party's in the White House to win a Senate race, but absolutely a real prospect for Republicans. It does an interesting thing to the Republican field. I mean, Sean Duffy's district is a district where Donald Trump was very strong. He had a chance to kind of command the Trump vote and also command the outstate vote. A lot of the people that are thought to be considering a run are from southeastern Wisconsin. So that sort of kind of regional subgroup is pretty crowded right now. Duffy would have had a real shot running from another part of the state against them.
And Duffy was seen as somebody who could raise a lot of money too, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, he's been in Congress. He's had a high media profile. He's had his stumbles in the media, but he definitely brought a lot to the race. And if he could have marshaled again the sort of Trump base and the vote in northern and western Wisconsin, it's quite possible that the others in the race would have split up the sort of suburban vote closer to Milwaukee, and it would have been he would have had a very, very good chance of winning a Republican primary.
Well, the recent stumble on CNN with Alison Camerata clearly didn't help him much, but he does, to be fair, he does cite his family in his statement. Let's move to Reince Priebus at the White House Chief of Staff. Politico has a story out this morning that basically says that his problems aren't over. Roger Stone, a close associate of Donald Trump, says there's more revelations to come out about Priebus. I mean, what's going on there?
Well, I mean, his problems are never going to be over, because I think the volatility and to some degree chaos in the Trump White House is probably will never completely end. I mean, they are kind of at the beginning of this presidency. They've gotten off to a really turbulent start, but this is also this turbulence is also a reflection of the president. It's a reflection of the team he's put together, the factions he's brought together, of his style, of his own unpredictability, of his kind of penchant for speaking out on whatever he feels like speaking out on Twitter. So that is a kind of a minefield for a White House Chief of Staff, because it's really your job to bring order to chaos when you're White House Chief of Staff. That job is a pretty monumental one under this president, under these circumstances. And so there are going to be lots of bumps ahead. However long he stays in this job, there are always going to be people who are going to have the knives out for him. It's not going to be smooth sailing.
Well, let's move to Paul Ryan in Congress. As the turmoil continues at the White House, Republicans in Congress still have an agenda they'd like to pass. What's happening with that?
Well, it's also gotten off to a slow start. I mean, they say they're on track, but there are a lot of questions about what shape, they want to do very big and ambitious things. I mean, they want to rewrite the tax code. They want to replace Obamacare. There's talk about infrastructure, border security, deregulation. There's foreign policy issues. But there's confusion again about sort of what the White House wants and what stamp it wants to put on the kind of House agenda. Some of these issues are really, really difficult to legislate on. I mean, when you rewrite the tax code, there are winners, but there are also always going to be losers. And so it hasn't been smooth sailing for House Republicans either. They're confronting, particularly in the Senate, a united Democratic opposition, which can really slow things down in the Senate. But even in the House, just because of the kind of broader confusion over and turmoil in the White House, I would say I think they've gotten off to a slower start than they would have liked.
So you wrote this week that congressional Republicans in Wisconsin, the ability they have to maybe distance themselves from President Trump sort of varies directly with how Trump did in their districts. Explain that, and who's in the best position to be independent?
Yeah, so a lot of it depends on how well Trump is doing overall, and how well he's doing with Republican voters. Those are the voters that these Republican congressmen are going to be most responsive to. But if you look at their districts, again, we talked about Sean Duffy. His district was the one where Trump had his biggest winning margin. Trump clearly that rural blue collar strength. So somebody like Sean Duffy probably has less political room in his own district to break with Trump, to disagree with Trump. Than someone like Paul Ryan, who, even though he's obviously expected as House Speaker by his membership to be pretty supportive of this president, if you look at his own district, Trump didn't win it by all that much, and Ryan kind of dramatically outperformed Trump in his own district. Jim Sensenbrenner also dramatically outperformed Trump in his district, very Republican district, but a district where a lot of those conservative Republican voters had big qualms about Trump during the primary. So I think you see some variation across the Republican spectrum in terms of what kinds of pressures these members are going to get from their own constituencies when it comes to some issues where they may have disagreements with Donald Trump and whether they can express them fully or not.